At my cousin Shanice's engagement dinner in Atlanta, she raised her glass, looked straight at me, and said, "I hope I never end up like her, single with a kid in the hood." The room erupted in laughter. Not polite laughter, but real loud laughter, the kind that shakes the table, like she just delivered the funniest line of the night. My Uncle Jerome slapped his hand against the table and added, "Brothers don't want baby mama drama. That's just facts. Keep it real." Even my own mother let out a small chuckle as she reached for her Moscato. I sat there frozen, my face burning, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, forcing myself to look calm, to act like it didn't matter, like I hadn't just been turned into a joke in front of everyone at this soul food restaurant in the heart of Southwest Atlanta. And then something unexpected happened. Darius, Shanice's fiancé, stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't say anything at first. He simply pushed his chair back and walked slowly across the room toward me. The laughter died almost instantly. Chairs stopped scraping. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Every single person turned to look. And then Darius said, "I think y'all need to know something." The room went completely silent. I'd gotten the invitation a month before the dinner. Cream-colored cardstock, gold lettering with Kent cloth trim, perfectly over the top. "Join us to celebrate the engagement of Shanice Williams and Darius Mitchell." I stared at it for a long time before setting it down next to a stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen counter in my apartment near Cascade Road. Shanice and I hadn't spoken in over 6 months, not since she'd made a joke at a baby shower in College Park about how I collected WIC vouchers and bad decisions. I'd laughed then to keep the peace, but the comment had settled in my stomach like a stone. I wasn't sure I could sit through an entire evening surrounded by people who still looked at me like I was a teenage cautionary tale, even though I was 32, raising my son Elijah on my own, working 2 jobs, one at Grady Hospital and another doing hair on weekends in Decatur, and keeping our tiny apartment afloat with late-night freelance braiding work and prayer. I almost didn't go. I was fully prepared to make an excuse, but my mama called me 3 times the day before. "Shanice's family," she said. "Just smile, eat a little, show your face. It's one evening." She didn't say the rest out loud, but I knew it anyway. Don't cause a scene. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Blend in. Don't be that angry black woman they expect you to be. So I went. I found the nicest dress I owned, 2 years old and just barely able to zip. I borrowed shoes from my neighbor in the building. I let Elijah choose the necklace I wore. He picked a small gold pendant shaped like Africa and told me it looked like his. When we arrived at Pascal's restaurant in the West End, I could already feel the tension hiding behind the fried chicken platters and fake hugs. The private dining room was decorated with elegance. Low lighting, soft neo-soul playing in the background, expensive bottles of Hennessy, and dust lined up like trophies. Everyone wore their Sunday best like armor. The women had their hair laid, edges slicked, nails freshly done. The men wore crisp button-downs and gold chains. Shanice floated across the room in a fitted silk, dress the color of burgundy, and far too much Fendi perfume. She kissed my cheek like I was a distant relative she barely remembered. "I'm so glad you came," she said, smiling without warmth. "Did you bring a +1 or just Elijah?" "Just Elijah," I said. "Oh," she replied, already turning away to greet someone more important. Elijah was sent to the kids' table with a coloring book and mac and cheese. I was seated near the end of the long table draped in Kent cloth between my mother and my Aunt Beverly, who spent the first 10 minutes showing me photos of her trip to Martha's Vineyard, where she'd met other bougie black families from Prince George's County and Oak Bluffs. I scanned the table. Uncle Jerome, Shanice's dad who worked in real estate in Buckhead, was already several drinks in. My mama looked like she'd been trying to disappear since we walked through the door. Across the room, Darius stood quietly near the bar with his younger brother. I noticed how often he checked his phone, how tight his smile looked. It was clear who the room revolved around. Shanice soaked up the attention easily, moving from conversation to conversation with practiced charm, her laughter ringing out over mentions of her new condo in Midtown and her planning job at Coca-Cola headquarters. She had always known how to make people laugh, how to command a room in Atlanta's black professional circle. When the appetizers arrived, fried green tomatoes and she-crab soup, my mother leaned over and whispered, "Just keep your head down. You look nice. Nice. Not beautiful. Not strong. Just nice." I nodded. I tried to enjoy the food. I breathed through the awkward silences and the pointed looks from relatives who still saw my son as a mark against me, who still whispered about the baby daddy who'd left when I was pregnant, who'd moved to Houston and never looked back. I laughed when expected, passed the cornbread, played my part, all while holding my breath inside. I didn't expect kindness, but I didn't expect what came next either. When the main course was cleared, smothered chicken, collard greens, candied yams, and glasses were refilled, Shanice stood. She raised her champagne flute and tapped it with her fork. I assumed it would be a standard toast. Love, gratitude, black love winning, a few safe jokes about finding a good black man. I was wrong. She waited until the room quieted, smiling like she was on stage at the Apollo, feeding off the attention. Darius sat beside her, silent, his hands folded on the table. His eyes flicked toward me briefly, then dropped back to his plate. He looked exhausted. "Thank you all for being here," Shanice said. "I can't believe I get to marry someone like Darius. He's patient, smart, got a good job at Delta, and most importantly, he puts up with me." Laughter followed. Her voice was smooth, confident, polished from years of Jack and Jill and AKA events. "I just hope our marriage lasts. I'd hate to end up like some people." She turned her head, just enough to make sure everyone understood. I mean, single at 30 with a kid, living off Section 8 and child support that never comes. She laughed. The room exploded. The laughter wasn't hesitant or uncomfortable. It was loud and full-bodied. My Aunt Beverly wiped tears from her eyes. Uncle Jerome slapped the table, already laughing before he even spoke. "Brothers don't want baby mama drama," he said. "That's just facts. You can't expect a good black man to wife up somebody else's responsibility. That's just how it is in the community." My stomach dropped, so hard it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I looked toward my mother. She gave a weak smile and reached for her wine. I wanted to disappear. I stared down at my empty plate, my hands clenched in my lap, twisting my napkin until it was nothing but wrinkles and knots. I could feel eyes flicking toward me. Not long enough to be called staring, just long enough to confirm the joke had landed. I was the punchline. I thought of Elijah, only a few feet away, happily drawing a picture of Black Panther on a napkin at the kids' table near the wall, decorated with photos of civil rights leaders. He hadn't heard. He didn't know they were talking about his mother like she was damaged goods, something worn and unwanted, something that didn't fit the narrative of black excellence they all preached about. Aunt Beverly leaned toward me and whispered, "Oh, honey, she didn't mean it. Shanice just likes attention." It wasn't attention. It was cruelty poured into a champagne glass and served with a smile at a fancy restaurant in the West and where our grandparents had marched for dignity. I straightened my back, refusing to let them see me fold. My cheeks burned. My heart thudded, so loudly I could barely hear the Jill Scott playing softly in the background. I looked again at Darius. His gaze was fixed on his hands. His jaw was tight. He wasn't laughing. Shanice carried on as if nothing had happened, tossing out a few more jokes about how she'd made Darius get rid of his PlayStation and how he wouldn't survive marriage without her guidance. The laughter this time was thinner. A few people shifted uncomfortably. My mother fidgeted with her bracelet. No one spoke up. That was the worst part. No one said anything. They laughed because it was easier. Because it's always easier to laugh at the black woman who didn't do things the right way, the one who had a baby without a husband, the one who showed up alone, the one who didn't fit neatly into their idea of respectability politics and black middle-class success. I thought about standing up. I thought about grabbing Elijah and saying something sharp before walking out into the Atlanta night. I had words ready, something biting and true, something that would land. But I didn't say it. I swallowed it. I sat there and let the heat crawl up my chest and into my ears. I reminded myself this was just one night. I'd go home to Cascade, tuck Elijah into bed, and leave all of this behind. Then Darius stood up. He didn't say a word at first. He pushed his chair back and walked around the table. The room stopped moving. Shanice blinked. Jerome reached for his glass. My mother stared at her lap. Darius walked until he was standing beside me. The sound in the room flattened like the air had been sucked out. He looked at me, then turned to face the table. The family he was about to marry into. "I think y'all need to know something," he said. No one laughed. No one moved. In that moment, everything shifted. His words didn't just break the silence, they froze it. Shanice looked confused, like she was waiting for the punchline she didn't recognize. My uncle lowered his glass. My mother finally turned toward me instead of past me. I couldn't breathe. Darius was close enough now that I could see how tightly his jaw was clenched. I braced myself for more humiliation. Maybe he'd agree with them. Maybe he'd make it worse. Instead, he said, "I can't sit here and let this continue." His voice was calm, steady, not loud, but firm enough that no one interrupted him. "Shanice, that wasn't a joke. That was cruel." She opened her mouth, but he lifted his hand. "I need to say this." His eyes swept the table. "Y'all laugh at Keisha like she's a failure, like her life is something to avoid, but what you don't see is that she's the strongest person in this room." My heart pounded. I didn't understand what was happening. Darius continued, never breaking focus. 2 years ago, when I was at one of the lowest points of my life, she helped me. Not with empty encouragement, but real support. She gave me her time and her kindness when no one else noticed I was struggling. People shifted in their seats. Shanice's smile had vanished. My mother's hands were folded tightly in her lap. When I lost my job at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport during the pandemic, I fell into a depression. I drank too much. Shanice told me to man up and get over it. Her dad told me to stop being weak. But Keisha checked in on me every week when I was living in East Point, barely making rent. She helped me rebuild my resume. She connected me with someone she used to work with at the hospital. She even watched my niece during my sister's surgery so I could go to interviews in Alpharetta and Sandy Springs. She never asked for anything. He turned to me. "You saw I was drowning and you pulled me out." My throat closed, not from shame, but from disbelief. Darius faced the table again. "So when you laugh at her, when you reduce her to some stereotype, the struggling single black mother, the cautionary tale, the one who messed up, you're insulting the person who helped me stand back up." Shanice stood abruptly. "What are you doing?" "I'm being honest," Darius said. "I'm not going to sit here and watch you tear someone down to feel better about yourself. Are you trying to embarrass me?" "No," he replied. "You did that yourself." No one spoke. My uncle's face was red. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear. Darius looked at me again. "You didn't deserve any of that." I nodded. It was all I could manage. In a room full of people who claimed to love me, who claimed to represent Black unity and family values, he was the first to stand up for me when it mattered. The room stayed frozen in thick silence. After Darius finished speaking, I could hear the low hum of the overhead lights. Somewhere in the restaurant, a tray clattered to the floor. No one laughed. No one even shifted. Tessa remained standing, staring at Darius as if he'd slapped her in front of everyone. Her cheeks were flushed, not with embarrassment, but with anger, sharp and unfiltered. She scanned the table, clearly expecting someone to jump in, to smooth it over, to defend her, but no one did. Uncle Jerome finally cleared his throat and muttered, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." Darius didn't look at him. "You want to talk about emotion," he said evenly. "Let's talk about what it actually takes to raise a Black child alone in America. To work 2 jobs in a city where rent keeps going up. To show up every day when it's inconvenient, when the system is stacked against you, when you're doing it without help, without support, without the father who should be there. That isn't weakness. That's strength." Shanice crossed her arms. "Are you saying you have feelings for her?" Darius looked at her like he was seeing a stranger. "I'm saying I respect her. I admire her. And maybe if you spent less time performing perfection and posting about Black excellence on Instagram and more time actually listening to Black women's struggles, you'd understand why that matters." The words landed heavy, not just because they defended me, but because they exposed something deeper. This wasn't only about me anymore. It was about truth, about calling out the polite cruelty everyone in our community had learned to excuse, the respectability politics that said you only deserve dignity if you follow the rules perfectly. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. She finally looked at me, really looked, and I saw something shift in her expression. Guilt, maybe. Recognition. 4 years, she'd asked me to stay quiet, to smile, to keep the peace, to not be the stereotype. Maybe she was seeing for the first time what that silence had cost me. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I didn't expect redemption. But I felt it anyway, something loosening in my chest. Darius turned fully toward me. He didn't touch me. He didn't reach for my hand. He simply stood beside me with a quiet steadiness that felt like protection without ownership. "You deserve better than this," he said. I met his eyes and didn't look away. Not this time. I stood up slowly. My hands were steady now. I looked down the table at the people who had spent years defining me by the one part of my life they disapproved of, as if one chapter erased the rest of the story. As if being a single black mother made me less than. As if struggling meant I wasn't strong. Shanice sat rigid and silent. My mother was finally speechless. Jerome stared into his glass. And I felt no fear. I turned toward Elijah, still at the kids' table, holding up his drawing proudly when he saw me. I smiled back. "I think we're going to head out," I said. I wasn't asking permission. I walked over, helped Elijah gather his crayons, and picked up the picture he'd made. A small black superhero flying toward a sun with uneven rays. He handed it to me like it was something precious. "Did you have fun?" I asked. He nodded. "Are we going home?" "Yes," I said. "We are." Darius stepped aside to let us pass and gave me a small nod as we walked by. It wasn't a goodbye. It was acknowledgement. You were seen. You mattered. At the door, I glanced back once. No one was laughing anymore. Shanice sat stiff and silent. Jerome scrolled through his phone. My mother stared into her glass, her fingers trembling. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need approval. I had told the truth, simply by standing there and leaving with my dignity intact. Elijah slipped his hand into mine, and we walked out together into the Atlanta night. The night air felt different the moment we stepped outside onto the streets of the West End. Not colder, just cleaner, lighter, as if a weight I'd carried for years had finally lifted. Elijah skipped ahead on the sidewalk, waving his drawing like a flag. I watched him and thought about everything it had taken to raise a black child who was still joyful, still full of light, even when his mother had walked through fire to protect it. For years, I'd seen my life through the lens of what I'd lost. The relationship that ended when his father left. The family that never understood. The security I gave up when I chose to become a mother on my own. I let their voices tell me my worth. I wore their judgment like it was my responsibility to fix. But walking away that night, hand in hand with my son, something inside me became clear. Not anger, not pride, just truth. They stopped laughing because someone finally said it out loud. Not the story they told about me, the struggling baby mama, the welfare queen stereotype, the cautionary tale, but the story I'd actually lived. The story of survival, of strength, of raising a beautiful black child in a world that tried to tell us we didn't matter. I didn't need validation. I didn't need permission. I needed honesty. I needed someone to see me as more than their assumptions. Darius didn't rescue me. He didn't fix me. He saw me. And by doing that, he forced everyone else to see me too. That moment wasn't just about defending me. It broke something. A cycle that told black women they only mattered if they came with the right packaging. That called single black mothers failures. That labeled strength as something shameful if it came without a ring, without a degree from Spelman or Howard, without a house in Stone Mountain or a condo in Buckhead. My mother texted me later that night. One sentence. "I'm sorry. It didn't undo the past, but it cracked something open. Maybe even started something new." Shanice never reached out. I didn't expect her to. I don't measure myself by her approval anymore. What I needed, I had already given myself. The courage to leave a place that diminished me and walk away whole. I tucked Elijah into bed when we got home to our apartment near Cascade. He was tired but happy. He told me he loved me before falling asleep. I sat alone in the living room, still in my dress, letting the quiet settle. I thought about all the years I tried to be invisible. All the times I made myself smaller so I wouldn't offend or embarrass anyone, so I wouldn't be the angry black woman, so I wouldn't be the stereotype. No more. I've walked through enough alone to know I never need to apologize for surviving. I've raised a kind, loving black child in Atlanta, Georgia, in the heart of the culture, in the city that's supposed to be for us. I've built a life with grit and grace. And if anyone ever tries to laugh at that again, I won't stay silent. I'll stand. I'll meet their eyes. And I'll walk away with the proof that I've already won. Not because I'm perfect, but because I refuse to quit. If you've ever been the one people talked about behind polite smiles at family cookouts in Detroit, church dinners in Houston, or family reunions in Memphis, if you've ever felt like the punchline in a story that was never fair to begin with, I want you to know something. You are not damaged goods. You are not a statistic. You are not a stereotype. You are not too late. You are enough exactly as you are right now in this moment, and you deserve to be seen. So many of us, Black women especially, spend years shrinking ourselves to fit into rooms where we were never meant to stay. We soften our voices, lower our eyes, and apologize for our existence just to keep the peace, just to avoid being called angry, just to prove we're respectable enough. But healing begins the moment you stop apologizing for your truth. It starts when you give yourself permission to stand up, to walk out, and to stop carrying shame that was never yours to hold. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your own strength, your own worth, or a moment when you finally chose yourself in Baltimore, in Chicago, in New Orleans, in Oakland, anywhere our people call home, I hope you hold on to that feeling. Carry it with you. Let it remind you that you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to begin again. And if no one has told you this today, let me say it clearly, you're doing better than you think. If this story resonated with you, like the video so others can find it too. Comment below and share your story. I read every single one. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the heart of our community, our struggles, and our strength. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment that might change the way you see yourself. And if there's someone in your life who needs to hear this, another Black woman, another single mother, another person who's been made to feel less than, share it with them. You never know who's waiting to feel seen. Thank you for being here.